The hotel receipt should have meant nothing. It was just a small piece of paper lying beside my husband's car keys on our kitchen worktop. But by the time I finished reading it, I realized my marriage might already be over. The booking wasn't for one guest. It was for two. And the date printed across the top matched the exact night James had kissed me goodbye and said, "I'll probably be working late in Manchester. Don't wait up." I remember standing there in complete silence, reading the same lines over and over again, hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me. They weren't. The hotel was one we'd talked about visiting together for our anniversary. Instead, someone else had been there with him. In that moment, I had two choices. I could confront my husband the second he walked downstairs, or I could stay quiet and discover just how many lies one man could hide. For 12 years, James had been the kind of husband everyone admired. Our friends always joked that I'd won the lottery when I married him. He remembered birthdays without reminders, brought me coffee every Sunday morning, and never forgot to kiss me before leaving for work. We lived in a quiet neighborhood just outside Birmingham, where nothing much ever happened and everyone knew everyone else's name. From the outside, our marriage looked ordinary in the best possible way. We laughed, argued about silly things, watched films on Friday nights, and planned holidays we'd never quite found time to take. If someone had told me a month earlier that James was hiding something from me, I would have laughed. I trusted him completely. Looking back now, I realize trust doesn't disappear all at once. It fades quietly, hidden behind small changes that seem too unimportant to question. James started traveling to Manchester more often. He suddenly needed privacy whenever his phone rang. Messages arrived late at night, and he would smile at the screen before quickly locking it. Every time I asked who kept texting him, he'd shrug and say, "Just work." I believed him because I wanted to. Sometimes love makes you ignore the very things that should worry you the most. I looked down at the receipt again, trying to convince myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Then something else caught my eye. Beneath the room charge was another item: dinner for two. A 3-course meal, followed by a bottle of champagne. James hated champagne. He always complained it gave him a headache after one glass. My heart began to pound. If he hadn't ordered it for himself, then who had he ordered it for? Before I could think any further, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. I quickly folded the receipt and slipped it into my handbag. A second later, James walked into the kitchen, smiling exactly the way he always did. "Morning," he said, leaning over to kiss my forehead. "You look tired." I forced a smile and turned back towards the kettle so he wouldn't see the panic on my face. "Didn't sleep very well," I replied. He wrapped his arms around me for a moment before picking up his coffee. "Long day today," he sighed. "Another meeting in Manchester." The words hit differently this time. I nodded without saying anything. For the first time since we'd been married, I wasn't wondering whether my husband was telling the truth. I was wondering how many times he'd lied before. And deep down, a feeling I couldn't explain kept whispering the same thing. The hotel receipt was only the beginning. Bilkul Dost. Part 2 High. Ism investigation ko slow or suspenseful raka gaya high. Tak viewers in tak jude rahen. Paragraph format mainlika gaya high or UK audience kalia natural English use ki gaya high. For the rest of that morning, I acted as though everything was normal. I made breakfast, asked James if he wanted another cup of coffee, and smiled whenever he looked at me. It was the hardest performance of my life. He kissed me goodbye, picked up his briefcase and said, "I'll see you tonight." I watched him drive away until his car disappeared around the corner. The moment he was gone, the silence inside the house felt unbearable. I took the receipt out of my handbag and spread it across the kitchen table. This time I wasn't reading it as a wife trying to trust her husband. I was reading it like someone searching for evidence. Every number, every timestamp, and every detail suddenly mattered. That's when I noticed something I had missed before. At the bottom of the receipt was a loyalty membership number. My heart sank. Hotels don't offer loyalty rewards to people who stay once. That meant James had been there before. Maybe several times. I wanted to throw the receipt away and pretend none of it was real, but I couldn't. Instead, I picked up my phone and called the hotel. I knew they wouldn't reveal private information, but I hoped they might accidentally tell me something. The receptionist was polite but careful. "I'm sorry, madam, we can't discuss guest bookings." I expected that answer. Just before ending the call, I took one last chance. "Can you at least tell me whether the reservation was for business or leisure?" There was a short pause before she replied. "It was registered as a leisure stay." I thanked her, ended the call, and sat there staring at the wall. One sentence had destroyed every excuse I'd been making for him. He hadn't been working late. He had chosen to spend that evening somewhere else. With someone else. That evening, James came home carrying my favorite red roses. Normally, I would have wrapped my arms around him without thinking. This time, I could only stare at the flowers and wonder whether guilt had made him buy them. "Thought these might cheer you up," he smiled. I thanked him and placed them in a vase, pretending everything was fine. During dinner, he talked about work as though it had been an ordinary day. I barely heard a word. Every time his phone buzzed, he picked it up within seconds before turning the screen away from me. Later that night, after he had fallen asleep, I quietly reached for his jacket hanging by the bedroom door. I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but I needed answers. Inside one pocket I found a parking ticket from Manchester dated 2 weeks earlier, even though he'd told me he'd spent that day in Leeds. Then, tucked inside a smaller pocket, I found something that made my stomach tighten. A hotel key card from the very same hotel printed on the receipt. He hadn't forgotten it. He had carried it around without even realizing. I slipped everything back exactly where I'd found it before climbing into bed beside him. As I lay awake listening to him sleep peacefully, one thought refused to leave my mind. If he had lied this many times without feeling guilty, what else was he hiding? And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just afraid of discovering another woman. I was afraid the truth might be far worse than I had imagined. The next Friday, James told me he had another overnight meeting in Manchester. He sounded calm, almost rehearsed, as though he'd delivered the same excuse dozens of times before. I smiled, wished him luck, and watched him drive away. 10 minutes later, I picked up my own car keys. My hands were trembling, but my mind had never been clearer. The drive to Manchester felt endless. Every mile gave me another chance to turn around, but I didn't. I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. When I reached the hotel, I parked across the road where I could see the main entrance without being noticed. For almost 30 minutes, nothing happened. Then James appeared. He stepped out of a taxi, laughing as he opened the door for a woman about my age. She smiled at him with a kind of comfort that only comes from knowing someone well. They walked inside together, their shoulders brushing as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I lifted my phone and took a photo, convinced I'd finally uncovered his affair. But before I could lower the phone, something unexpected happened. A little girl, no older than 6, ran out of the hotel lobby, threw her arms around James and shouted, "Daddy!" My heart stopped. James picked her up, kissed her forehead, and held her exactly the way he used to hold our niece. The woman smiled at them both, and together they disappeared into the hotel restaurant like a family who had done this many times before. In that moment, I realized the receipt hadn't led me to an affair. It had led me to a second life. I don't remember much about the drive home. My eyes were full of tears, and my thoughts refused to settle. The man I'd trusted for 12 years had hidden something I could never have imagined. The following evening, James came home carrying takeaway and acting as though nothing had happened. He smiled when he saw me. "Long weekend," he sighed. "I'm exhausted." I looked at him quietly before placing 3 things on the kitchen table: the hotel receipt, the hotel key card, and the photograph of him holding the little girl. His smile vanished instantly. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, "Please, let me explain." I looked straight into his eyes and said, "I've listened to your excuses for months. Today I want the truth." He slowly sat down, buried his face in his hands, and admitted everything. Years before we met, he'd had a brief relationship that he believed had ended without consequences. Months ago, the woman had contacted him and revealed that the little girl was his daughter. Instead of telling me the truth, he panicked. He secretly met them, paid for hotel stays, and tried to build a relationship with the child while hiding everything from me. He insisted there had never been a romantic relationship between them since we'd married. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. But by then it no longer mattered. The deepest wound wasn't another woman. It was the fact that he had looked into my eyes every single day and chosen lies over honesty. Trust isn't destroyed by one secret. It's destroyed by every lie told to protect it. A few months later, I moved into a small cottage on the edge of Birmingham and started rebuilding my life one day at a time. Sometimes I still think about that hotel receipt. It looks so ordinary, just ink on paper. Yet it uncovered a truth that changed my life forever. It looks so ordinary, just a piece of paper. Yet it uncovered a truth that changed my life forever. It looks so ordinary, just ink on paper. Yet it uncovered a truth that changed my life forever. If you were in my position, would you forgive James after hearing the full story? Or would you walk away? Tell me your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoy emotional relationship stories with shocking twists, don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might leave you speechless.